Okay, so Mrs. Diva and I welcome all of you for this session today. I would like to begin by acknowledging Asta Jain's commendable initiative for creating this platform, Mrs. Diva, for all of us. As we all know, she's a business coach who encourages and who helps entrepreneurs to grow their business and helps housewives and moms also to become financially independent. I am Dr. Ritu Dhawan. I'm a psychologist with specialization in child development. I have my own setup, Unnati Pathways, wherein we counsel children and parents regarding their various concerns. We also do career mapping for class 12th onward students, where we help them to select the best suitable careers for them. We also hold workshops for parents and teachers, again, working towards holistic development of children. Today's session is about understanding the teenager years with respect to various domains like mental, social, emotional, and uh, uh, social, emotional, and as well as how best parents can nurture these children to the best of their abilities. We'll begin with one domain like physical, and as we know that all these domains are connected, it's not as if the physical is independent of the mental and the mental is independent of the social and emotional. So, part of what I'm going to present today is based on my PhD dissertation thesis, wherein I worked with about 40 families and studied the socialization pattern of children in these families. And there were a lot of variations and a lot of interesting conclusions that came out of this research, some of which I will share with you during my interaction today, during my session today with you. So first, let's begin with what is exactly adolescence. What does adolescence entail? It's actually a transitional period between childhood and adulthood, where the youngster basically leaves the childhood behind and is in a transitional phase before they enter the adulthood, where the individual strives towards a fully developed physical, emotional, social, and intellectual growth. So, adolescence basically starts with what we all know as puberty. Now, behind reaching puberty is the movement of your hormones in the body. These hormones are basically chemicals which start moving in the body of children around 8 to 9 years of age, a little earlier for girls than boys. And these hormones, usually estrogen in girls and testosterone in boys, these hormones are responsible for the various changes we find in our adolescence, in terms of uh, the growth spurt which emerges as soon as they reach menarche in girls, where you see a sudden change in the body size, a sudden change in the body contours of girls, and you see various other what we call the secondary uh, uh, sexual characteristics like pubic hair, underarm hair, change in the voice of boys. These are all the secondary sexual characteristics which we can see as a result of the hormonal changes that take place and the biological maturity that the adolescent achieves. Apart from these visible changes, there are a lot of changes taking place within the body in terms of their reproductive organs. You see them maturing, moving towards adulthood, and because of all these changes, you see mood swings, You see impulsive actions, you see change in emotions in your youngster, which is all related to the hormonal changes that are taking place in their bodies. See, most of it, even the adolescents are not aware of what is happening to them. And that is the reason of so much of moodiness in them, so much of what you say, impulsive behavior that you see, Now, there is an approximate age at which you see these changes in the youngsters, But there's something called early maturation, which is something called late maturation. These are all individual differences which you see in adolescence, Some children reach maturity a little earlier, where you see all the changes in the body and the hoarseness of voice, and they're getting taller, while in others you see them a bit later. But early maturation and late maturation also have an impact on the psyche of your adolescent, And how much impact and what impact exactly depends on the individual as well as about the social atmosphere that we have around us here. What is socially, culturally acceptable? Like early maturer boys are probably happier. They are acceptable because height and well built is usually acceptable in our culture. Uh, Girls maturing early, probably not very acceptable, So early maturer boys tend to show more confidence, tend to try and dominate their peers. The psychological impact of early and late maturation is evident in uh, many teenagers. Late maturing also can make an adolescent felt left out from the group, because see, at this moment, social acceptance by peers is a very important factor in their life. And similarly, their physical attractiveness also is a very important aspect of their growth. How good they look, how well are they accepted by their peers, um, are they fitting the socially acceptable norms of physical growth, physical attractiveness. So now, how an adolescent is able to know whether he or she is socially acceptable in terms of physical features, Sometimes you get a direct comment from a person, a peer, a parent, a relative, that you look very nice, And sometimes you get an indirect message, that if somebody has to be picked up as a friend, sometimes people who are more physically attractive in appearance, they are shown preference, even for things like picking up children in plays and dramas in the school, Sometimes, even if unintentionally, the teachers give preference to A, B, or C, So that leaves a mark on the child's psyche, And consciousness, so much of consciousness about their appearance also uh, influences their eating pattern, their exercise pattern, and various other things in their life. So, eating disorders are also one of the very prominent things that parents see during this phase. They start to see, if girls are putting on more weight, they try and become very conscious about it. They stop eating or they eat very little, uh, usually with girls, that becomes that again influences their mind, their psychological well-being, So all the domains of development, as we will go along, we'll see that they are all interrelated. They influence each other, and any intervention in one domain would have its impact on the other domains also. So we'll move on to the second domain, which is the social domain, So as we see that, adolescence is an age where peer influence starts to come out really well, You see a shift in children's way of interacting with parents at home, um, and with the peer group. In younger age group, peers, friends were more for playing games, and for interacting per se, But as the children mature and they reach adolescence, you find that the connect with the peers increases, The emotional anchorage with peers becomes much more, They learn a lot of skills with them, but the element of companionship, emotional fulfillment, increases with peers vis-a-vis parents. You see a slight shift, from children of this age, adolescents reaching out to parents vis-a-vis reaching out to their peers, So, for any advice, for any approval, now it is the peer group, it's the friends that they approach vis-a-vis the parents uh, in earlier life, for all approvals, So peers become a source of stability, a source of, succurrence for them, And because they feel that the peers are also undergoing the same journey, they are also experiencing the same changes, the same things, So they are very empathetic towards each other. They feel that the peer group will understand them more vis-a-vis the parents, So they confide more in peer group. They seek for approval from them, and they share a lot of things with the peer, because the main thing is that they feel that the peer group will understand them better, if they're wearing a new dress, the approval should be coming from the friends vis-a-vis the parents, So there is kind of a realignment of power balance and authority in the parent-child relationship, So the time spent with the parent kind of declines, and the time spent with the peers, it increases dramatically. They would rather, I think, uh, start staying with the peers only if given a choice at this age, Uh, Apart from this, awareness of the opposite gender, of the opposite sex, it begins, till about 11, 12 years, you see same gender friends dominating, predominating the friend circle. But as soon as adolescent creeps in, you find the interest in the opposite gender emerging. And they start liking, they start developing a liking to have uh, across gender, opposite gender friendships also, So at this stage, you will find many of the adolescents getting into opposite gender friendships, and uh, wanting to get into maybe stable relationships also, Apart from friends, same, almost same age siblings also, they start playing a very major part, They start getting preference over parents, in many shared activities, sharing secrets, and many other things, So, parents are kind of getting replaced with siblings, cousins, and friends, during this age group, Margaret Mead, an anthropologist, she studied many societies couple of years back, and she came to the conclusion that the social environment around, or the society, are at large responsible, whether the experience or the years, the teen years or the adolescent phase, is a phase of agitation, storm and stress, or whether it is calm and stress free, So it is up to us adults, around these adolescents, whether in the form of teachers, whether in the form of mentors or parents, to handle and to nurture our youngsters, so that this stage passes with as much calm and as much peace, So in simpler societies, the transition from the childhood to parenthood is far simpler than what you find in the industrialized societies. This is basically because uh, the transition where the adolescent has to learn to successfully participate in the economic activities in the industrialized societies is far longer, in terms of the adolescent has to get himself educated, has to study for longer, has to groom himself for the future life in terms of what career he has to take, which stream has to take, so as to sustain himself in the coming years, so this whole exercise also is a source of stress, strain, um, to our teenagers, because they have to be groomed to fend for themselves economically tomorrow. And it's some societies have some ceremonies which are called the rites of passage, which is kind of an indication to the teenager himself or herself that now is the time that he or she has to engage in a different role, in a adult like role and leave the childhood behind, which also is an indicator that there is going to be some change coming, but in most of our societies this is not there, so even sometimes it is very confusing for the teenager to understand, whether we are still children or whether we are on the path of adulthood, so the confusion is writ very large on their faces, now the social aspect of life is very, very closely connected to the emotional well-being of the children, as we have seen that social acceptance is a very big thing for adolescents here. So if an adolescent is very well socially accepted, you see the child with good self-esteem. He has a very good image about himself, that he's been accepted by a large number of peers, which raises his confidence, helps him to adjust better in the society. Wherein you see children who are quiet loners, they are not part of big cliques, groups in school. So these are the children who are probably having low self-esteem. Self-esteem is how you assess yourself, So these are the adolescents probably having low self-esteem. So this influences again their psychological development, They feel out of the group. Sorry, they feel out of the group. They feel awkward. It leads to low confidence levels also, and it takes them time to adjust to the environment, And the level of esteem, whether high or low, is also related somewhere to your performance in school, how well you perform, not only academically, but also in various others cultural activities, Children who have high esteem are more accepted by their peers also because they are confident, they take lead, So these are the people who do well in cultural, extracurricular, as well as sometimes academics also. Now, apart from self esteem, another important criteria which deals with emotions is your self concept. Now, what is self concept or self identity? It includes your personality, your areas of interest, your aptitude, the career that you're going to take up or you're planning to take up. So all this constitutes your self identity, the person you are. Eric Erickson, another socio-psychologist, a very famous, says that adolescents during this time of adolescence look for the answer to the question, "Who am I?" Which is a very vital thing for finding their own identities, So this is the phase where they can find their identities or delve into various role confusions, So this is a very important aspect of adolescence, that the adolescent is searching for their identity, the answer to the question of who am I, who they are as a person. So there is a lot of experimentation that goes on during this period, where the childhood securities are left behind and the adolescent aims for adult autonomy, in this phase, the search for vocational roles is also on, and it is a period of very many trials and errors, where the adolescent has to keep experimenting, finding what is right, what is not too good for him, and construct a viable path towards adult maturity. Now, the reason behind why an adolescent does what he does or she does is also related to their mental development. Mental development is again in psychological terms known as cognitive development. And Piaget is a very famous psychologist who worked on the stages of mental development. So the mental horizon, the progress starts from the time the child is born. And according to Piaget, when adolescence comes, it's the final stage or formal operational stage where the adolescent strives to achieve by end of adolescence. So there are certain features of the mental development which are the underlying reason for the various behaviors, the various offshoots in terms of their mood swings, their preferences, and what you see in the youngsters. So, according to Piaget, when the child reaches adolescence or the end of adolescence, they are able to reason out things, they are able to systemize their ideas, construct theories, and test the theories very logically and scientifically. Before I move forward, if there are any questions, I can answer. Thank you, Kavita. Hope the other mothers are also liking the session. Any questions before we move forward? Okay. So we move on to the mental development of children, adolescents. So by the time they reach this stage, they can think abstractly, which means that they can think about their thoughts. They can think about what other people are thinking. So thinking about abstract thoughts, abstract things, it it leads to uh, developing self consciousness in them. How they can probably think of what you are thinking about them. Okay, so that is the reason of their becoming very self-conscious about the way they dress, the way they talk, the way they conduct themselves. They feel that they are at the center of the stage, and everybody around is watching them. So that makes them kind of conscious because they can think about what is there in your mind. The second thing that emerges from this is self-focus. Self-focus is that most of them feel that they are very unique. They are they are unique. They are important. What they feel and what they see and what they think is the best thing around because uh, they feel like this, so they don't bother much about what you as a parent or somebody else's observation to correct them. They feel that what they are doing is the right thing to do. So they carry out with it. Next is they kind of live in a idealistic world, which is sometimes far from the real world. They talk about things as, when I become a doctor, I will do this. You are not able to do this. I will do it when I grow up. So because of the manner in which they can think, abstractly, they create an idealistic world around themselves where they think and feel that everything is perfect or is going to be perfect or they're going to make it perfect. So they kind of disconnect themselves from the real world of what is happening today. That brings a kind of disconnect, between the real and the ideal world that they want to live in. Then they are very much capable of propositional logic. Propositional logic is when you can evaluate verbal statements and propositions, without reference to the real world. That is why it's a very important thing to whenever there is a discussion or whenever there is any reference or any argument, it's important to logically explain to the teenager, giving reasons behind why you are saying what you are saying, because logic works, with them. Uh, if you see their various aspects, their inclination towards conformity with peers, their inclination towards being accepted by the peers, their inclination to be one of the many, which kind of leads them away from creativity. So you find most of the teenagers inclined towards conformity. They do not want to uh, move away from what is the socially acceptable thing, what is the norm, or what others are doing and what their friends like, and what is the done thing or what is the acceptable thing in life. So, looking at these aspects, various domains of an adolescent, I hope this has given you some more clearer picture of why an adolescent does what he does. Sometimes it is not that they are doing it deliberately, it is just because of certain restraints of their thinking, their ways of understanding things around them that leads them to do all this. So now I would like to delve into how we as parents can nurture them in the best possible way. Uh, so the first is some of the things that I would like to bring out is that you keep the channel of communication open with them. Uh, Talk to them, try to understand them, and that would probably give you the lead to understand many aspects about them, why they want to do something, how they want to do something. And instead of lecturing and instead of preaching, the issues need to be discussed. So, discussion, explanation, reasoning is what works with them in most of the cases. And when you are explaining and reasoning, you can help them to learn the various ethical and moral principles of our society also. Mutual respect and regard for the needs, each other's needs. The main idea behind this is that you have to start treating them more like adults now, more like as your contemporaries now. So mutual respect and regard is important. Emotional warmth, appreciation if they do something else good, acceptance of the changes that they want in their lives. Uh, One would see many a times the disparity between an adolescent idealism and adult, the parents' realistic view. So this is where the focus needs to be drawn. So when you are in such a situation, then you need to focus on the issue, solution of the issue, instead of resorting to exchange of any negativity. Is my video coming? Hello, Asta? Can anyone just reply? Asta? Okay. So parents need to grant autonomy in slowly increasing amounts as you feel that the adolescent learns to use it responsibly. So another point that is important is that you need to be very, very consistent in your disciplining. If you say one thing one day, please stick to it. Certain rules which are set down on day one are the rules which should be followed. So don't keep changing the rules. So consistency in discipline is an important thing. Uh, to sum it all, I would say that the parenting style best fit is authoritative but democratic, where you can encourage responsibility, initiative, autonomy, as well as decision making. But in doing all this, it has to be under your guidance and with you setting the limits within the parameters of disciplining them. I hope I was able to put across the pointers well to you, and let's all of us work towards it. And instead of running behind the image of an ideal parent, I would request you all to do whatever you are able to do best to the best of your being, and to enable our children, to enable our adolescents, to enable our children of any age group to become better than us, so that we all leave the society richer than we found it. A big thank you to everyone who joined us. Please feel free to connect with us for any queries. I would be very glad to help all the mothers. Any queries right now, I'll be happy to answer them. Any queries? Um, Asta, any questions? I'm trying to see if there are any questions. Okay. Thank you, everyone. For any further queries, you can get in touch with us. Uh, Happy viewing, and thank you so much, Asta, once again for creating this platform. Kudos to you. Thank you.